Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be exploring some really interesting ideas about self-knowledge and personal growth and how to build healthier relationships.
Yeah.
All from just one text. Can you believe it? It's by a psychologist named Elizabeth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so get ready to unlock some serious self-awareness.
It's amazing how much you can learn from just one really good source sometimes.
It's true. I mean, I was really blown away by some of the things she had to say. It's like having a personal guide for all these complex parts of life.
Definitely.
And it sounds like you're ready to dive deep and really understand yourself better.
Absolutely. I'm always looking for ways to learn and grow. You know how sometimes anxiety can feel like a raging fire?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, Elizabeth has this brilliant analogy that really shifted my perspective. She says anxiety is more like an alarm,
Oh,
not the fire itself.
I like that.
It's a signal. It's not a crisis. It's your body saying, hey, pay attention to this.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in that feeling and think it's the end of the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
It could be anything. It could be work stress or a relationship issue, or maybe you're just wrestling with a big decision.
Yeah, I know for me sometimes it's like my to-do list is just way too long.
Right.
And I start to feel that anxiety creeping in.
Absolutely. And the longer we ignore those signals, the louder they get.
Makes sense. It's like ignoring that check engine light in your car.
Exactly. Eventually, something has got to give.
So true. Now, Elizabeth actually illustrates this point really well with a personal story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When she was just 13, her father passed away by suicide.
Wow. I can't even imagine.
It's heartbreaking, and you can only imagine the grief and anxiety she must have faced at such a young age.
Definitely. It makes you realize that life can throw some serious curveballs.
It does. But here's the thing. Elizabeth's story shows that even in the face of immense loss, the human spirit is incredibly resilient.
We're tougher than we think sometimes.
We are! We've all been through tough times. Things that felt impossible at the time, but somehow we found a way through.
That's so important to remember. When those everyday anxieties start creeping in, whether it's that presentation at work or a tough conversation with a loved one, those moments can trigger our alarms too.
They do. It's like
Yeah.
our body's way of saying, hey, pay attention.
Exactly. And Elizabeth encourages us to think about what sets off our anxiety and whether any changes are needed in those areas.
It's like taking inventory of your emotional triggers, right?
Yes.
I know I have a few. Now, Elizabeth also talks about guilt, which I think everyone experiences at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, who hasn't laid awake at night replaying some past mistake over and over?
It's too many times to count.
Right. It's like a broken record in your head.
But Elizabeth suggests viewing guilt as a teacher, not a tormentor.
Okay.
It can help us take responsibility and make amends.
That makes sense. It's like turning a negative experience into something positive.
Exactly. And it can be really liberating to make things right,
Mm-hmm.
She tells a story about a friend who carried the weight of infidelity for years.
Oh.
It really drives home the lasting impact our actions can have, not just on others, but on ourselves too.
That's heavy stuff.
Mhm.
And speaking of heavy stuff, she also dives into managing some of those darker emotions: rage, hate, envy, sadness, the whole shebang.
All the fun ones, right?
Right. But it's important to talk about them because we all experience them.
Absolutely. It's not about denying these feelings. We all have them.
Yeah.
She uses this powerful image, a monster within,
Okay.
to illustrate what can happen if we let those emotions run wild.
That's such a vivid image. I can see it now.
Right. And she also compares our emotional responses to waves.
Oh, I like that.
They rise, they peak, and then they eventually subside.
Makes sense. It's like riding a wave.
Yes. And it's during those peak moments that we're most likely to make impulsive decisions or say things we regret.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So ride the wave. Don't make major decisions or have crucial conversations when you're at the crest of that emotional wave.
Got it. So what should we do instead?
Try talking to yourself in a calming way.
Be your own therapist.
Exactly. Be your own best friend. And see if you can notice patterns in your emotional responses. Over time, you'll get better at recognizing those triggers and navigating those choppy waters.
So it's all about building that self-awareness.
Yes. Knowing yourself is key.
Now, Elizabeth also makes this interesting point that sometimes our emotions aren't always the most accurate reflections of what's actually happening.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. You might get super jealous if your partner is just having a friendly chat with someone else.
Okay.
But that internal jealousy might not match the reality of the situation.
Right. It's like our emotions can sometimes get ahead of us.
Exactly. So instead of immediately lashing out or seeking reassurance from others, Take a moment to look inward.
Pause and reflect.
Yes, and understand why you're feeling that way. What past experiences or insecurities might be fueling that reaction.
It's like checking in with yourself before hitting the panic button.
Exactly. Now, Elizabeth also encourages us to be open and honest with our loved ones about our feelings, even those that seem irrational.
Vulnerability is so important.
It is. It's about being authentic in our relationships. But she also cautions against seeking all our validation from external sources.
So we need to find that balance between connecting with others and feeling secure within ourselves.
Exactly. Building a strong internal sense of self is so important. Okay, buckle up because this next part is powerful.
Oh, okay, Meg.
Elizabeth compares our emotional responses to a hot stovetop. Sometimes those uncomfortable feelings are actually warning signs, a way to protect ourselves from harmful people or situations.
Like our internal alarm system going off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those signals. She brings up this fascinating experiment called the Stanford Prison Experiment.
I've heard of that one.
It's a chilling example of how situational pressures can lead people to act in shocking and even cruel ways.
It's scary to think about how easily our behavior can be influenced by our environment.
It is. It shows the power of context. In that experiment, ordinary students assigned roles as guards and prisoners quickly adopted those identities with the guards exhibiting disturbing behavior.
Wow. And this connects to another famous study, the Milgram experiment, where people were pressured into administering what they thought were painful electric shocks to others.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder of the importance of having a strong internal compass, especially when we're facing external pressures.
Knowing your values and staying true to them.
Even when it's difficult. Speaking of navigating a world full of influences, Elizabeth doesn't shy away from discussing social media.
Well, that's a big one these days.
It is, especially its impact on younger generations. She shares her own experience of being both an avid user and a content creator who received praise for her seemingly perfect relationship.
It's easy to get caught up in that curated reality.
It is. Remember, people often only share their highlight reels, creating a false sense of perfection that can trigger feelings of inadequacy in others.
It's like comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's perfectly edited movie.
So how do we navigate this tricky terrain? Well, Elizabeth suggests that we curate our social media feeds intentionally. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad or trigger those comparison traps.
It's like spring cleaning for your social media.
It is. And even more importantly, take a moment to reflect on why certain accounts evoke those feelings in you. What underlying needs or insecurities might they be tapping into?
That's a great point. It's about developing that self-awareness we talked about earlier.
It's like being your own social media therapist. Now, even though connecting online is important, Elizabeth also reminds us of the power of disconnecting and spending time alone.
Getting away from all the noise.
Exactly. She points out that our society often prioritizes social interaction over those quiet moments of solitude.
And she shares a charming anecdote about her childhood. Every week, she would choose a new book at the library,
Oh, I love that.
creating this ritual that fostered her love of reading and gave her dedicated time for self-reflection.
It's such a simple but powerful example of how we can nurture our inner world.
Absolutely. And she encourages us to find activities that allow us to unplug and reconnect with ourselves.
Like what?
Whether it's drawing meditation or even just being present while we're doing everyday tasks.
It's about carving out those spaces of stillness in our busy lives.
Exactly. It's amazing how much clarity and insight can emerge when we give ourselves that quiet time.
Now let's shift gears and talk about relationships.
Okay.
Elizabeth emphasizes the importance of building healthy connections, and she uses this really clever metaphor of choosing the right soundtrack for your life.
I love that. What does she mean by that?
It's about surrounding yourself with people who align with your values and bring harmony to your life, not those who create dissonance or drama.
People who bring out the best in you.
Absolutely. And a key part of those healthy relationships is setting boundaries even with the people we love.
Boundaries are so important.
They are. Elizabeth stresses that true friends and loved ones will respect those boundaries.
If they care about you, they'll want you to feel safe and respected.
Exactly. And if someone consistently pushes back or disrespects our boundaries, that might be a sign that the relationship needs some reevaluation.
That's a good point.
Mm.
Sometimes we need to create some distance from people who aren't good for us.
It's true. Elizabeth introduces this helpful concept of relationship spring cleaning.
Okay.
It's about periodically taking stock of your relationships and creating distance from those that no longer serve you.
It can be tough to let go, but it's an act of self-care.
It is. It's about creating space for healthier connections to flourish.
Yep.
Okay, here comes the hard part. What happens when people repeatedly ignore those carefully crafted boundaries we've set?
That's a tough one.
It is. Elizabeth is very clear. A boundary without consequences is meaningless.
So we need to back up our words with actions.
Exactly. It's like saying you'll leave a relationship if infidelity happens again, but then staying when it does.
Ouch, yeah. That's sending mixed messages.
It is. Actions speak louder than words, and sometimes we need to back up those boundaries with consequences to show that we mean business.
It can be hard to follow through, but sometimes it's necessary.
It is. It's about respecting ourselves enough to uphold those boundaries even when it's painful. Sometimes ending relationships, however difficult, is necessary for personal growth.
It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to tolerate behavior that undermines your well-being. We're in the home stretch now.
Okay, almost there. Elizabeth concludes this section by talking about what it means to be a healthy person for others.
I'm curious to hear her take on this.
It all starts with self-awareness.
Knowing yourself.
Exactly. We can't show up authentically and healthily in our relationships if we don't understand ourselves first.
It's like trying to give directions to a place you've never been. You're just going to get lost.
Exactly. So it's like having a clear map of your own inner landscape before venturing out to explore the world of relationships. I love how Elizabeth encourages us to set realistic goals for personal growth.
Small steps lead to big changes.
They do. If someone struggles to express their feelings, maybe they start by aiming to share one feeling a day.
That's a great starting point.
It is. And Elizabeth also points out the value of listening to feedback from others. Sometimes those closest to us can spot patterns in our behavior that we might miss.
It can be hard to hear, but feedback is a gift.
It is. It's a valuable tool for growth. Speaking of valuable tools, Elizabeth introduces this thought-provoking concept from the philosopher Immanuel Kant called the categorical imperative.
That sounds intense.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually a pretty simple idea.
Okay, break it down for me.
Think about it this way. If everyone acted the way you're acting right now, would the world be a better place?
It's about considering the impact of our actions on others.
Exactly. Elizabeth urges us to embrace this way of thinking, to choose kindness and compassion, recognizing that everyone carries unseen burdens.
We're all connected in some way.
We are. It's like realizing that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves. Now, I want to circle back to anxiety for a moment.
Okay.
Because Elizabeth dives deeper into its nuances. She explains that anxiety isn't always a sign that something is inherently wrong.
Sometimes it's just our body's way of telling us to pay attention.
Exactly. It can actually be a signal that something is important to us.
Okay.
It's like a highlighter, drawing our attention to what matters most.
Interesting. So how do we know if our anxiety is a sign of something serious or just a signal that we care?
That's a great question. She gives the example of feeling anxious before giving a big presentation.
We've all been there.
Right. Maybe that anxiety isn't telling you to run away and hide.
Maybe it's telling you to prepare and practice.
Exactly. Perhaps it's highlighting how much you care about doing well. It's a sign that you're invested in the outcome.
It's your passion and dedication dialed up to 11.
I like that. It's like reframing anxiety as a form of engagement rather than a sign of weakness.
So instead of trying to eliminate anxiety completely, which is often unrealistic,
Right.
we can focus on managing it effectively.
Working with it instead of against it.
Exactly. It's about learning to understand its messages and to channel its energy in a positive direction.
Now, Elizabeth also tackles a common misconception about anxiety, especially in relationships.
Oh, what's that?
Some people think that feeling anxious in a relationship automatically means it's a bad relationship.
Or that we should end it.
Right. But is it really that simple?
I don't think so.
Me neither. Elizabeth suggests that a certain level of anxiety is actually natural, especially in new relationships.
When you're still figuring things out.
Exactly. Think about those early stages. Everything's new, getting to know each other, there's uncertainty.
It's a vulnerable time.
It is. And it's totally normal to feel a bit anxious.
Yeah.
It's about navigating that uncertainty and vulnerability while also being mindful of any real red flags that warrant attention.
Okay, so what kind of red flags should we be looking out for?
Well, Elizabeth highlights a few key areas. First and foremost, it's crucial to assess whether your partner consistently makes you feel safe and respected.
That sounds like a fundamental building block for any healthy relationship.
It is. Do they value your opinions and boundaries? Do they make an effort to understand your perspective even when they disagree?
Those are such important questions. It's about feeling seen and heard.
Exactly. Not dismissed or invalidated. Another red flag is a lack of reciprocity in the relationship.
So like when one person is always putting in more effort.
Exactly. Are you constantly carrying the weight of the relationship on your shoulders?
It can be exhausting.
It can. It's about noticing those imbalances and having honest conversations about them. It might be uncomfortable, but those conversations are crucial for building a healthy and fulfilling partnership.
Communication is key.
Always. Elizabeth also talks about the challenge of addressing issues or concerns with our partners.
Those tough conversations.
They can be make or break moments in a relationship. And Elizabeth offers some really helpful tips for navigating those tricky waters. She suggests approaching these conversations from a place of vulnerability and empathy.
So instead of launching into a list of complaints or accusations,
Try starting by expressing your feelings and needs in a non-blaming way.
that makes sense.
For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you could try saying, "I feel unheard when."
It's about shifting the focus from blame to understanding.
Exactly. It takes the sting out of it. And Elizabeth stresses the importance of active listening during these conversations. It's about truly hearing and trying to understand our partner's perspective.
Even if we don't agree with it.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where both partners feel safe to express themselves openly and honestly.
So it's all about building that trust and safety in the relationship.
Absolutely. Elizabeth also offers some advice on navigating those power dynamics that can sometimes emerge in relationships.
Oh, yeah, power struggles can be toxic.
They can. She cautions against engaging in them, where one partner tries to assert dominance over the other.
It creates a win-lose dynamic.
It does, and no one truly wins in the end. So how do we avoid falling into those traps?
That's a good question.
Well, Elizabeth encourages us to strive for a more collaborative approach. It's about working together as a team, respecting each other's needs and opinions.
Like a partnership.
Exactly, where both individuals feel valued and empowered, not a competition. Elizabeth really highlights the importance of mutual respect and understanding in relationships.
Those are the foundations of a healthy connection.
They are. It's about creating a dynamic where both partners feel supported and encouraged to be their best selves.
I love that.
But Elizabeth also acknowledges that not all relationships are meant to last.
That's true. Sometimes people grow apart.
They do, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, we grow apart from our partners, or we realize that our needs and values no longer align.
It's a difficult truth, but sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice.
It can be. It can be painful, but it can also be incredibly liberating.
And it can open up possibilities for new, more fulfilling connections.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that sometimes letting go is an act of love.
Both for ourselves and for the other person.
Elizabeth really doesn't shy away from the complexities of relationships, does she?
She covers it all, the good, the bad, and the messy parts.
She does. And now she shifts our attention to a topic that's often overlooked: the importance of forgiveness.
Forgiveness can be so hard.
It can be, especially when we've been deeply hurt or betrayed.
It's easy to hold on to anger and resentment.
It is. But Elizabeth emphasizes that those negative feelings can be incredibly toxic in the long run.
They keep us stuck in the past.
They do. So it's more about freeing ourselves than letting the other person off the hook.
Exactly. Forgiveness is ultimately an act of self-care
It's about releasing the burden of pain and anger.
and creating space for healing and growth.
That's a powerful way to look at it. It shifts the focus from the other person back to ourselves and our own well-being. And Elizabeth also points out that forgiveness doesn't necessarily require reconciliation with the person who hurt us.
You don't have to be friends with them.
Exactly. We can forgive someone without condoning their actions or allowing them back into our lives. It's about finding peace within ourselves.
Regardless of the other person's behavior.
It's like reclaiming our own inner peace and power.
And remember, forgiveness is a process, not a destination.
It might take time.
It might involve some ups and downs.
It's not a switch we can just flip on and off.
Exactly. It's about being patient with ourselves and allowing ourselves to feel whatever emotions come up.
And it's important to remember that forgiveness is a sign of strength, not weakness.
It takes courage to let go of anger and choose compassion.
Speaking of compassion, Elizabeth encourages us to extend it not only to others, but also to ourselves.
Self-compassion. That's a tough one for a lot of people.
It is. We're often our own harshest critics.
The inner critic can be brutal.
Tell me about it. But Elizabeth suggests that we try treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a dear friend.
So instead of beating ourselves up over our shortcomings,
We acknowledge our imperfections with gentleness and learn from those experiences without harsh self-judgment.
be your own cheerleader.
Exactly. Offer ourselves the same support and encouragement that we would offer to someone we love. I love that Elizabeth emphasizes self-compassion because it's such a vital foundation for personal growth and well-being.
It makes sense. When we're kinder to ourselves, we're more resilient.
We are. And we're more likely to take risks and pursue our goals.
And she reminds us that self-compassion isn't about being self-indulgent or letting ourselves off the hook.
Okay.
It's about recognizing our own humanity and treating ourselves with respect.
It's about creating that inner sanctuary where we can feel safe and accepted even when we're struggling.
I love that image of an inner sanctuary.
You too! It's so peaceful. Elizabeth also offers some practical tips for cultivating self-compassion. She suggests paying attention to our self-talk.
That inner voice.
Yes. Are we constantly criticizing and judging ourselves? If so, can we start to shift that inner dialogue to be more supportive and encouraging?
Be your own best friend.
Exactly, the person who cheers you on and believes in you even when you stumble.
And remember, self-compassion is a skill that takes practice.
Like anything else, the more we do it, the more natural it becomes. Now, Elizabeth dives into a topic that's particularly relevant in today's fast-paced world, the importance of slowing down and prioritizing rest and rejuvenation.
We live in a culture that glorifies busyness.
We do. It's like we're always striving for more, for better, for faster, and it's exhausting.
It is. Elizabeth encourages us to resist that pressure and to prioritize our own well-being.
So it's about giving ourselves permission to rest, to relax, to recharge. It's about recognizing that rest isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
Sometimes we forget that.
We do. And Elizabeth reminds us that rest isn't a sign of weakness or laziness. It's essential for our physical, mental, and emotional health.
Rest is productive.
It is. She also challenges the common misconception that being busy equates to being productive or successful.
Busyness doesn't always equal productivity.
Sometimes it's in those moments of stillness and reflection that we have our best ideas.
I find that to be true.
Me too. Or we make the most meaningful connections.
So true. It's about shifting our mindset from doing to being.
From constantly striving to simply allowing ourselves to exist in the present moment.
I love that. Being present is so important.
It is. Elizabeth really highlights the importance of finding balance in our lives.
It's about honoring our need for both activity and rest.
And for both connection and solitude.
Speaking of finding balance, Elizabeth also delves into the delicate dance of managing our energy levels and setting boundaries to protect our well-being.
This is such a key part of self-care.
It is. I think a lot of us struggle with overcommitting or saying yes to things we don't really have time or energy for.
It's so easy to do, especially when we want to be helpful or please others.
But Elizabeth reminds us that it's okay to say no.
We don't have to be superheroes.
We don't. It's okay to decline invitations or to delegate tasks.
Sometimes we need to put ourselves first.
Exactly. It's not selfish, it's self-preservation.
It's about honoring our own limits and recognizing that we can't do it all.
So true. And Elizabeth also encourages us to be mindful of our energy levels throughout the day.
Like, when do we feel most energized?
When do we need to step back and recharge?
It's about paying attention to those cues and adjusting our schedules accordingly.
Become an energy detective.
I love that. Tracking your peaks and valleys throughout the day.
And create rituals or routines that help you manage your energy more effectively.
Give me some examples.
Maybe it's a morning meditation practice, an afternoon walk in nature, or an evening dedicated to relaxing and unwinding.
It's about weaving moments of rejuvenation into the fabric of our day.
I love how she puts that. It's so poetic.
I know, I love her writing style. It's so engaging and insightful. I love how she weaves together these practical tips with those deeper psychological insights.
It's a good reminder that personal growth is an ongoing journey.
It is one that requires both self-awareness and intentional action.
And Elizabeth encourages us to approach this journey with curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to experiment.
Find what works for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about becoming your own personal growth scientist, testing out different hypotheses and seeing what resonates.
That's a cool way to look at it. And Elizabeth also reminds us that we don't have to do it all alone.
We need support.
We do. Seeking support from friends, family, or a therapist can provide valuable guidance and encouragement along the way.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders and coaches in your corner,
rooting for you every step of the way. Now, Elizabeth shifts our attention to the realm of self-discovery and personal growth, and she emphasizes the importance of cultivating a growth mindset.
The growth mindset. That's so important.
It is. It's about believing that our abilities and intelligence aren't fixed.
We can learn and grow.
They can be developed through effort learning and perseverance.
Yeah.
It's about embracing challenges as opportunities for growth rather than seeing them as roadblocks.
So instead of viewing setbacks as failures,
we see them as valuable learning experiences.
it's all about perspective.
It is. It's about changing our perspective, reframing those failures as stepping stones on the path to success.
And Elizabeth encourages us to step outside of our comfort zones.
Embrace the challenge.
Yes. And to continuously seek new knowledge and experiences.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and wonder about the world around us. It's about staying open to new possibilities and recognizing that learning is a lifelong adventure.
I love that. Never stop learning.
Exactly. She also encourages us to reflect on our values and to identify what truly matters to us.
What do we want to contribute to the world?
Yes, what kind of legacy do we want to leave behind?
Those are big questions, but Elizabeth reminds us that we don't have to have all the answers right away. It's about exploring these questions with an open mind and heart.
Be curious.
Exactly. It's about being curious about our own purpose and our place in the world.
And she encourages us to take action in alignment with our values.
Walk the walk.
Yes. It's about making choices that reflects who we are and what we believe in, even if it means going against the grain or challenging societal norms.
It's about having the courage to live authentically, even when it's not easy. Now, Elizabeth delves into a topic that's particularly relevant in our digitally connected world: the importance of cultivating meaningful relationships.
In a world of social media, it's easy to feel disconnected.
It is. We're constantly bombarded with messages about connection, but are we truly connecting in a way that feels meaningful and fulfilling?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. Elizabeth observes that technology can both connect and isolate us.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. It's about finding a healthy balance. It's about recognizing the value of both online and offline connections and being intentional about how we use technology.
To enhance our relationships, not detract from them.
Exactly. So it's about using technology as a tool for connection, not a substitute for it.
And Elizabeth emphasizes the importance of prioritizing quality over quantity in our relationships.
Not about having a ton of friends, but having a few really good ones.
Exactly. It's about cultivating deep, meaningful connections with people who truly support and nourish us.
The people who get you, who you can be yourself with.
And who make you feel seen and loved.
Those are the relationships that truly matter. And she reminds us that building those connections takes time and effort. It's not something that happens overnight.
Relationships take work.
They do. It requires vulnerability, trust, and a willingness to show up authentically.
Be yourself.
Exactly. It's about being present, listening attentively, and offering genuine care and support. It's about putting in the work to nurture those connections.
And create those bonds that sustain us.
Through thick and thin, Elizabeth also offers some helpful tips on navigating conflict in relationships.
Conflict is inevitable.
It is. But how we handle it can make all the difference.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
It's about learning how to navigate it in a healthy and productive way.
Exactly. Elizabeth encourages us to approach conflicts with a spirit of collaboration and a willingness to compromise.
Finding solutions that work for both parties.
Exactly. It's not about winning the argument.
It's about remembering that we're on the same team even when we disagree.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It does in relationships too. And she stresses the importance of communicating our needs and feelings clearly and respectfully.
So no yelling or name calling.
Right. It's about expressing ourselves in a way that is assertive, but not aggressive.
Finding that sweet spot between honesty and kindness.
Exactly. Elizabeth also encourages us to be mindful of our own communication style. Are we assertive and direct, or do we tend to be more passive or avoidant?
It's good to know your own tendencies.
It is. It's about understanding our own tendencies and how they might impact our interactions with others.
Become a communication detective.
I like that. Analyzing our own patterns and figuring out how to communicate more effectively. And Elizabeth reminds us that effective communication is a skill, one that can be learned and improved over time.
With practice.
Exactly. It's about being willing to practice and to make adjustments as needed. Now, Elizabeth turns our attention to the importance of setting healthy boundaries in our relationships.
Oh, boundaries are so important.
They are. They're essential for protecting our well-being and preventing resentment from building up. It's about knowing our limits and communicating them clearly and consistently.
So no more people pleasing.
Right. It's about letting others know what we are and are not willing to tolerate. It's about standing up for ourselves and what we believe in. And Elizabeth emphasizes that it's okay to say no to requests or demands that feel overwhelming or intrusive.
Permission to say no.
Yes. It's about honoring our own needs and recognizing that we don't have to say yes to everything. It's about prioritizing our own well-being and making choices that support our physical, mental, and emotional health.
Self-care is not selfish.
It's not. It's about giving ourselves permission to put ourselves first sometimes. She also reminds us that setting boundaries can be challenging, especially with people who are used to getting their way or who have a history of overstepping our boundaries.
Those can be tough conversations.
They can. But Elizabeth encourages us to be firm and consistent with our boundaries, even if it means facing some resistance or pushback.
Stand your ground.
Exactly. It's about having those difficult conversations and standing our ground. It's about having the courage to say, this is what I need and this is what I'm willing to tolerate.
And Elizabeth reminds us that setting boundaries is ultimately an act of self-respect and self-love.
Taking care of ourselves.
Yes, it's about creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. Now, Elizabeth delves into a topic that can be both exciting and daunting: the pursuit of our dreams and passions.
Okay, let's talk about dreams.
What lights you up?
That's a good question. Elizabeth encourages us to identify what truly lights us up, what makes our hearts sing. What are those things that make us feel alive and excited?
Tap into your passion.
Yes, it's about tapping into that inner spark of passion and creativity that resides within each of us. It's about reconnecting with that sense of childlike wonder and excitement that we may have lost along the way.
It's never too late to chase your dreams.
It's not.
It's not. And she emphasizes the importance of surrounding ourselves with supportive people who believe in our dreams.
Yeah, your tribe.
Exactly. Who encourage us to pursue them. It's about building a network of cheerleaders who remind us of our potential and help us stay motivated when the going gets tough.
It's like having a team of personal cheerleaders in your corner.
Exactly. Always there to pick us up when we fall and celebrate our victories with us.
I love that. Now, Elizabeth also acknowledges that pursuing our dreams can be scary and uncertain.
It definitely can be. There might be setbacks, disappointments, and moments of doubt,
It's not always a smooth ride.
but she encourages us to view these challenges as opportunities for growth and learning.
Okay.
It's about developing resilience and perseverance, those qualities that help us bounce back from setbacks and keep moving forward,
It's like learning to embrace the discomfort of uncertainty.
and trusting that we'll figure it out along the way.
Trust the process.
Exactly. And Elizabeth reminds us that it's okay to ask for help and support along the way.
It's okay not to have all the answers.
It is. Whether it's from friends, family mentors, or coaches, having a supportive network can make all the difference.
We don't have to go it alone.
We don't. We all need support and encouragement sometimes, especially when we're stepping outside of our comfort zones and pursuing something new and challenging.
It's true. Elizabeth concludes this section by emphasizing the importance of living a life that feels authentic and aligned with our values.
Living a life true to yourself.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that brings us joy, meaning, and purpose. It's about making choices that align with our deepest beliefs and aspirations. It's about showing up each day as our most authentic selves without apology or reservation.
Love that.
And she reminds us that this is an ongoing journey.
A process of continuous self-discovery and growth.
It's about embracing the ups and downs, the challenges and triumphs, and recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly. It's about letting go of perfectionism and embracing the beauty of imperfection.
And she leaves us with a powerful message. To live a life that we can be proud of, a life that reflects our values and contributes to a better world.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired right now.
Me too. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that we all have the power to create a life that we love.
we do. And it all starts with self-awareness.
Knowing yourself is the foundation.
It is. What struck me while reading Elizabeth's work is how much emphasis she puts on self-care and self-compassion.
I noticed that too. It's so important, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about achieving more, doing more, being more.
It's like we never stop striving.
We don't. But Elizabeth reminds us that we can't pour from an empty cup.
We need to take care of ourselves first.
Exactly, in order to show up fully for others and for our dreams.
But self-care can feel so elusive sometimes. Like, where do you even begin?
That's a good question. Well, Elizabeth offers some really practical suggestions. And the great thing is self-care doesn't have to be elaborate or time-consuming.
Okay.
It could be as simple as taking a few minutes each day to meditate, read a book, or spend time in nature.
I love that. It's about finding those little pockets of time to nourish our souls.
And recharge our batteries.
Exactly. Hitting the reset button on our minds and bodies.
And Elizabeth also encourages us to be mindful of our inner critic, that voice that can sometimes be so harsh and judgmental.
Oh, the inner critic. We all have that voice, right? It can be so mean sometimes.
It can. It's like a constant stream of negativity playing on repeat in your head.
But Elizabeth suggests noticing those negative thoughts and challenging them.
With more compassionate and realistic self-talk.
It's like being your own best friend.
Exactly. Your own personal hype person.
I need a hype person. So it's about shifting from self-criticism to self-compassion.
Exactly. And she reminds us that we are all works in progress.
We're all human.
We are. We're all on a journey of growth and learning. It's okay to make mistakes and to be imperfect. In fact, it's essential. That's how we learn and grow.
Give ourselves permission to be human.
Exactly. We don't have to be perfect all the time.
In fact, perfection is overrated.
I love that. Embrace the perfectly imperfect you. What really stood out to me throughout Elizabeth's writing is how much hope and encouragement she offers.
Me too. It's refreshing to hear someone talk about personal growth in a way that feels so accessible and empowering.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential to create a life that we love, a life that is aligned with our values and our dreams.
And I think that's what makes Elizabeth's work so compelling. It's not just about theory or abstract concepts.
It's practical.
It is. It's about providing practical tools and strategies that we can use to make real lasting changes in our lives.
And she leaves us with this powerful message. To believe in ourselves, to embrace our imperfections, and to never give up on our dreams.
It's a message that resonates deeply no matter where we are on our personal growth journey.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's like she gives you this toolbox filled with all the essentials for personal growth.
It's amazing how much she covers in just this one text.
Right. Like we were saying, it's a roadmap for personal growth.
And a reminder that we're not alone in this journey.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was her emphasis on the ripple effect of personal growth.
Oh yeah, how when we work on ourselves, it's not just about us. It impacts everyone around us.
Exactly. It's like when you're feeling calmer and more grounded, you're naturally a more patient and supportive friend, partner, family member, you name it.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
So true. Self-care isn't selfish. It's actually the foundation for showing up for others in a more authentic and meaningful way.
And Elizabeth reminds us that personal growth doesn't have to be this huge, daunting task.
Right. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
It's about taking small, consistent steps in the right direction.
So what are some of those baby steps we can take?
Well, she talks about setting realistic goals. For example, if you struggle to express your feelings, maybe start by aiming to share one feeling a day with someone you trust.
Okay.
Or if you're trying to be more mindful, maybe you start with just 5 minutes of meditation each morning.
It's about setting ourselves up for success, starting small and building momentum over time.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that setbacks are inevitable. It's not about being perfect.
It's about progress.
Yes. It's about learning from our mistakes and getting back on track.
You know, it's funny because when we were prepping for this deep dive, I was thinking about how overwhelming personal growth can feel sometimes.
I know what you mean. There's so much information out there, so many books, podcasts, workshops. It's like a never-ending to-do list.
Right. But reading Elizabeth's work was so reassuring.
She makes it feel manageable.
She does. She emphasizes that it's not about doing everything perfectly.
It's about finding what works for you.
And committing to the process.
But creating your own personal growth recipe.
I love that. Experimenting with different ingredients and seeing what nourishes your soul.
So what are some key ingredients we might want to add to our personal growth recipe?
Well, Elizabeth talks a lot about self-awareness.
Self-awareness is the foundation.
It is. We're like ships sailing without a compass.
Lost at sea.
Exactly. So how do we cultivate that self-awareness?
It starts with paying attention
To
for thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Noticing those patterns and asking ourselves those tough questions.
Like what?
Why do I react this way? What are my triggers? What are my strengths and weaknesses?
It's like becoming your own inner detective.
Uncovering those clues that reveal who you really are.
I love that. And Elizabeth emphasizes that self-awareness isn't a one-time event.
It's a lifelong process.
It is. It's about constantly checking in with ourselves and being curious about what we discover. And she reminds us that we don't have to do this alone.
Having support makes a big difference.
It does. Seeking support from friends, family, a therapist, it can make all the difference.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders and coaches in your corner.
Rooting for you every step of the way. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some final nuggets of wisdom from Elizabeth that we can leave our listener with?
Well, her message of self-compassion really stands out. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a dear friend.
We all deserve that kindness.
We do. We're all human. We all make mistakes, and that's okay.
It's about silencing that inner critic.
And replacing it with a more compassionate and supportive voice.
And Elizabeth also encourages us to embrace vulnerability.
It's not a weakness.
It's a strength.
It is. It's about having the courage to be ourselves, even when it feels scary,
Letting go of that need to be perfect.
and allowing ourselves to be seen, flaws and all.
Love that. And finally, Elizabeth reminds us that personal growth is a journey, not a destination.
It's about embracing the process.
The ups and downs, the challenges and triumphs. It's about showing up each day with a willingness to learn to grow and to become the best versions of ourselves.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged on your own personal growth journey, remember to be kind to yourself
Be patient with yourself.
and keep moving forward one step at a time.
And never underestimate the power of even the smallest actions. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction.
You got this.
We hope this deep dive into Elizabeth's work has provided you with some valuable insights and inspiration. Remember, you have the power to create a life that you love, a life that reflects your values and your dreams.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to dream big and to go after what you want.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another insightful exploration of personal growth and self-discovery.